It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Frank Hammes. I remember his name. It's like a hammer with an S. He's the president and CEO of IQAir. And oh my gosh, pre-pandemic, I don't know if you ever even thought about IQAir. And the minute the coronavirus landed in March, Dental Town started blowing up with all kinds of threads. And they're all talking about Frank's product. Just let me list some of the threads. Recommendations for a certain air purifier, and they go to you. Chair-side aerosol vacuum, matching air purifier to size of enclosed operatory. Are you going to buy an extra oral suction device? Visualization of air filtration and why patients want it. Plexi shield with 300 CFM of evacuation. Is anyone familiar with dental air vac, oral aerosol evacuation system? I mean, it just goes on and on, but obviously I don't have to tell you that this has really changed dentistry and has moved you right to the forefront. So is this good news or bad news? How are you surviving? Because you got a pandemic and then your workload probably tripled?
Probably tenfolded at this point, but it's it's real crazy, and obviously the challenges are coming from two sides. Well, we have a challenge in global supply chain, right? So keeping our manufacturing going, making sure that we're able to deliver these products. We're air shipping a lot of products out from our facility in Switzerland all over the world, but airplane capacity, right, has gone down to about 10% of original. So we're facing a lot of problems. And the other thing is we have a lot of regular dentist customers that we're trying to serve. I mean, we've been doing, I just looked back over my personal involvement. I've done my first study participation in a dental project 22 years ago. So we've been really doing this for dentists for a very long time. Started out being all about mercury, right? Reducing the mercury exposure of dentists and their staff and the patients with these extra oral suction devices. And you know, through the years, we've seen increases in interest in dental practices, but obviously nothing that's close to what's happening right now. And it's something that we're not only experiencing in the U.S. but globally. You know, whether we're in Italy, Germany, Switzerland, even Asia, right? Even China right now is very interested in these products. And so it's definitely a challenge, but it's something that we try to do our best to really meet. And there's delays for some of the customers here in the U.S. that they're experiencing in shipments, but our team is building up to meet those challenges.
Well, you are so amazing in this. I mean, the company. So, were you born in Switzerland or Germany, or you're in Miranda, California right now?
Yes, yeah. By birth, I'm German. Our company's been in Switzerland since 1982. We do have manufacturing facilities in Switzerland and Germany. The products for dentists are all manufactured in Switzerland at our main facility, whether it's the air purifiers, which are used in the dental practices, and or the extra oral accessories that go with those. All are coming from Switzerland at this point.
And you have a big footprint in China too. So this is where the pandemic started. So you probably are very on top of this. So why don't we just start with, do you think your company's solution, air vacuum, do you think this is going to be part of the protocol of dentistry moving forward?
I think so. And I think it should have been a long time ago. I mean, if you go on our website, you'll actually see a peer-reviewed study, which was in the British Dental Journal in 2010, talking about bioaerosol reduction during dental procedures, right? And there are no recommended levels of bioaerosols really globally for dental practices. But there are certain guidelines, and many times these are not being met in dental, with dentists, not even before procedure even starts, right? So I'm always very amazed, but this is not new to air purification. You know, dentists, as many other businesses, have many challenges in their daily lives, and you deal with those which are visible. But with air pollution and infections, unfortunately, they're not so visible. So in order to do something there really takes a little bit of a, we see that it takes a little bit of a crisis to bring this to the forefront and for people to really address it head on. And so I definitely think that this is something that's here to stay. I think it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make a big change in any of the routine that a dentist needs to use. And this is part of what we're working with dentists right now to really make sure that they're able to integrate this without losing any time in terms of productivity, without them being inconvenienced in any way as they're working and delivering their service. So I do think this is here to stay. I think especially the extraoral units are going to be very important. Obviously, general air filtration will get a lot of inquiries from dentists or even wanting to upgrade the entire building air conditioning system to deal with this. But I do think there are priorities, and one of the priorities for us is make sure you have something that during the time aerosols are produced is able to help. But we've done a recent test at a dentist's office in Zurich in Switzerland, extremely clean air, but we saw that we're actually able, even with extraoral devices. So it's really a two-in-one system in order to provide some general filtration within the procedure room, as well as get rid of the aerosols during the procedures.
So there's been a lot of talk. There's so many talks. I mean, there's people now that are getting CPAP machines that they're going into the room like like they're a scuba diver. You have oral surgeons that I put the doors back on my operatory because now we're looking at should it be a negative air pressure room. We had the high speed suction, and now you're talking about these extra suctions. What do we need? I mean, my office in 13 states opened back up in May. So we're back up and running. So you have a moving target. We're all seeing patients now. What percent, I'm trying to get a feel for what percent of the dentists are back and going, and somewhere between 25 to 50% back as of now. What do you think the dentist's top priority should be on preventing a human-to-human respiratory transmission of a virus?
Right. We're not a complete expert in all of these areas. I can only report to you what I'm seeing right now, especially in Europe with some of the dentists. And I think it might be interesting for your audience, maybe as a contrast to what you're seeing in North America. I've recently been at a dentist who takes this very seriously in Zurich. What they were doing is basically, all the dentists are upgrading to the sort of N95 masks, right, from the previous more surgical mask. That's clear. That's an important one. We're seeing face shields. In terms of other protection, we're seeing very little at the moment. And I do also think that makes some sense. I see some dentists in videos on YouTube and elsewhere really suiting up, right? I don't think that's sustainable probably in the long term in terms of a comfort and safety aspect, because in many countries around the world, and air conditioning is not standard. So suiting up during the summer and so on is going to be a real difficulty. So what we were seeing in Europe, at least, we're seeing is that dentists don't do any special precautions in terms of their clothing and suiting up. Simply the face shield and the N95 mask, and obviously your oral hygiene and that's taken care of, and then them wiping down and obviously increasing their disinfection procedures around the office. So that's what we're generally seeing. And now the air purification side is just one of those additional measures that we see an interest in.
So there's dentists talking about so What do you think? What do you think that the top priority deals are? You talk about overshooting, that's kind of not sustainable. There's high speed suction. What products? Let's talk about market share. What products? The one thing I love about dentistry is your wife was her dad was a very famous musician, correct? And if I grew up in Kansas, I just didn't like country music. I liked rock and roll, it's just preference. But so a lot of market share with movies and music and things and art is just preference. But what I love about dentistry is your market share. Everybody has 8 years of college. They all had chemistry, math, applied math, physics, applied physics, chemistry, applied. So market share means a lot in dentistry. That's why we did the Townie Choice Award, because everybody voting is a doctor. It means something. So I would be very curious. And what did all my doctor friends, what did they rush to you and want to buy first?
Well, let's put it this way. This is really interesting. I see a lot of the inquiries coming in, and what is striking is exactly what you're saying right now. It's the technical, scientific nature with which dentists are inquiring, right? And we get most of the dentists, most of the emails and inquiries directly from the dentist, not from their assistant or not from their office manager. Is really a direct involvement there. And people who are basically already asking, giving us a lot of the information, this is the size of so many operatories, this is my square footage, I'm having these types of air handlers in my practice. So you definitely see people who are stepping right into the mud, right, into the technical nitty gritty and want to know more about what's important. We got a lot of questions. Basically, number one, our most popular product is definitely the one with the suction duct on it for the aerosol reduction. We still are getting, though, people also interested in reduction of mercury. For some reason, it definitely is something that I would say we get about 30% of inquiries where people say, well, I'm not interested in that at all. We're getting about 10% inquiries that specifically say they're interested in that aspect too. So I think they're looking a little bit in the longer term and the additional benefits of having this around. And then it goes down to general air purification. How about my waiting areas where my patients are waiting? I mean, right now I know that dentists are basically spacing out the way patients are arriving and all of that. But in the long term, again, you're going to have to probably go back to a little bit more sustainable way of planning and booking. And then the third most important inquiry that we're getting is, what can I do with my air conditioning system? We are recirculating the air throughout our offices, and we'd like to do something about that. So I think that's the order of priority. First, extraoral suction, then the general room air purification, and third of it, what can I do with my air conditioning system and my air moving devices?
So to be specific, though, what is the number one thing dentists are buying from you past the coronavirus outbreak? Which one? Was it the HealthPro series?
Well, yes, our room air purifiers definitely are. I mean, the beautiful thing with what we have right now is, while we have a waiting list for the extraoral suction ducts right now, the air purifiers, especially HealthPro series, is available. So that one is shipping within a few days. The specific dental units, which traditionally have been able to build, in addition to the microorganisms, also the mercury vapors and some of the VOCs in the office, those ones are on back order right now. So we don't see exactly the demand.
Okay,
we have a lot of people.
What is on the back order? I'm on your website. Is it the HealthPro series, the GC series?
No, HealthPro
or the
HealthPro series we're holding up right now. We're basically, as we're selling out, we're getting our product back in from Switzerland. So that supply chain is holding up okay. The dental series units, those ones on back order right now, and the flexible suction accessory, that is on back order right now. We're basically on back order anywhere between, depending on the items, between 3 to 6 weeks. We're air shipping a lot. We're doing a lot of direct express shipments to dentists all over the country, directly from Switzerland by FedEx. It's incurring an extra charge of $250, but many dentists are quite okay to take that because, again, all the air freight capacity really right now is just tremendously reduced.
So now, a lot of people say that during a pandemic, if you raise your price, you're gouging. But I have an MBA, and price is the best way to regulate supply and demand. If I want to pay $2 for it, you only want to pay $1. Well, I should get to buy it. And then all these people come out and they say, oh, that's gouging, and you should let the person who barely wants it get it as his price. Have to, when you, same thing with dentists, like you'll find a dentist that's booked a month in advance. And I always say, it's like a car. If you got a line of patients out there, you hit the gas and you eat up more road. And if you, so if people are waiting in line to give you money, why are you taking PPOs and HMOs and all that stuff? So have you been able to raise your prices? So the price equilibrium clearinghouse, that if I want this right now, I'm next up? Or are you trying to hold on to yesterday's prices and make me wait in line?
No, absolutely. We're not increasing prices. I mean, at this point right now, we ask for fair price. We've been doing this now for over 50 years, and we have so many long-time clients. It's just not the way we can do business. I'm sure the people who are entering the marketplace maybe right now are basically coming in at higher prices. Our prices for all of these units haven't changed for the past 5 years, and they're not going to change over the next few months. The only thing that we are charging extra for to cover our additional costs is if people need the expedited shipment by air freight directly from the factory, and that's what we're charging for, what it costs us extra. So we're able to do that. We make a good living in what we're doing, and we do think that ultimately right now we have a short-term shortage that we have, which we're expecting to continue for the next month or two. And we're gearing up production to be able to really make sure that we get this to everyone. And our equipment is not the cheapest, so we have a profit margin built in that we feel comfortable and that we think is fair to use. And again, dentists are not only our only customers by far. We supply hospitals, we supply different providers, we supply businesses in all walks of life with making sure that people are able to work in a safe environment. So for us, it's just our normal course of doing business, and it's our job to now just make sure that we're expanding availability.
So you said something earlier. My friends that were already great friends with yours, and like you, they were all the anti-amalgam people, the anti-mercury amalgam, and that's always been a huge controversy in dentistry. It's not really, it is and it isn't mainstream. None of the dentists do amalgams because none of the consumers want them. I'm a big fan of amalgam just because when I place a restoration, I know how it's going to fail. It's not going to fail because you bit down on a rock. It's going to fail from a bacteria, and a bacteria, Streptococcus mutans, working with fungi, yeast. That was something we just learned last year, that the yeast are building a wall around there, helping the Streptococcus mutans. So they're working with the yeast. There are many life forms. But the anti-amalgam people, when they remove an amalgam, they didn't want to breathe the mercury, and they already had a lot of your equipment. When did you start selling? What was anti-mercury amalgam dentist your first entry into dentistry? Was that your first?
Absolutely. Yes, it was. And it was 20 years ago, definitely. So I think we started selling these series about 22, 23 years ago, really quite early on in that area. And over the years, we've seen up and downs in the interest, recently more down, right? Because simply there's not that many, as you're saying, not many dentists are placing these units in first and second world countries anymore. And but we've now, I think this is how it got started. we're getting a lot of people who say, I already have 1 or 2 of your units and I need 4 more, right? I want to make sure that every chair has one. And that's, I think, how we got probably an early start in this, because we, again, not a new, if you go online right now and you're searching about, these extraoral units, you see many of the websites were started up in the last month or 2. And so these are very recent excursions in this area. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We've had a constant demand in that area. And simply what we're seeing right now is maybe 50 times as much demand as previously from dentists. And that's the only thing that has changed. And the change also, obviously, especially in aerosol reduction, specifically for viruses, bacteria, and so on.
Okay, so where does this suction go? So you're in the room taking away, when I'm removing an amalgam and you're taking out the mercury vapor, now it's a bacteria virus. Where does all that go?
Well, we have a multiple stage filter system. So the filter system does not change whether it's a standalone system or an extraoral system. So what's special about our system is you can actually put the unit up and buy a room air purifier and later on decide to convert that into an extraoral unit, or go back also, and take again the suction off the unit and just have it function as a standalone device. So that's very modular with us. And then the filters in there, we have a 3-stage filter system where we have a pre-filter, depending exactly.
So basically, I want to go back to I don't want to do too much of the mercury amalgam, but is mercury vapor and a coronavirus particle, is that kind of how is that different in a dental office?
Well, they're 2 different physical states, right? One is basically a gaseous molecule, and the other one is a solid particle, suspended sometimes in a liquid particle. So we need different filters for mercury than we do need for anything that's solid or liquid in the air. So any aerosols we will filter with an efficiency of well over 99% efficiency. For the gases, it depends on the gases. So that's the only customization really that's necessary in order for us to decide which system makes sense for the dentist. But most dentists these days are fairly and squarely interested in the aerosol capture, and that's basically any of our systems will do that very well, including the HealthPro Plus systems, which are probably the most popular device, definitely over the last month here.
Now you just coughed. Are you whenever you coughed, you start to get scared that you're a new?
It crosses your mind, but I'm probably one of the most. I'm probably one of the people the safest, right? You see me, the planes right now. Everybody has to wear a mask already. When I'm traveling, it's definitely become second nature, and able to rely on some of our own products there, so that helps.
So a lot of you said something very profound, that there's not a lot of new players in the market now. That you've been here 20 years. We're finding that with K95 masks that that's the best thing. I mean, if the company just started, if it just opened for business 2 months ago, you might have a K95 mask that doesn't filter anything. So you have the mask, and some of it doesn't even make sense. Like I remember when the AIDS came out in 1987. The first thing OSHA did, and it just really upset all my staff. We're in Phoenix, Arizona, and our uniform was white shorts and a Today's Dental shirt. And all the hygiene assistants, they all love their shorts because it's so hot. And the first thing we had to do is we had to wear long sleeves and pants. And I could never explain to the hygienist or assistant why we couldn't wear shorts. And now here it is 30 years later, and people are saying, well, what does a gown have to do? I mean, they get the face shield. It's a severe acute respiratory. I get it. I don't want a droplet. People sneeze and it lands on your face. I get the face shield. I get the plexiglass at the counter. But there's a lot of kids asking great questions. Why do I have to wear long sleeve shorts? Why can't I wear shorts? How does that work into the disease transmission?
Well, again, you're absolutely right. I would say as long as you make sure you don't have a transmission in any of your mucus, on your mucous membranes, you're okay, right? We've seen dentists work with a lot of protection, but short-sleeved, right? I've seen that in Switzerland recently, and simply them then having a procedure of taking a shower after work, making sure before they do anything else, they're able to do that. So make sure that they're protected in that way. I do think right now, obviously people are cautious. We don't have a lot of information yet, right? We still I think there's still a lot of denial about the airborne transmission aspect of this, but I'll think we'll soon learn that there is a fair bit of airborne transmission rather than just a very close distance, large particle transmission. And so I think people will adapt. But whatever it is, unless I tell my staff, we run a factory, right? We run call centers. And whenever we do something in our office, as I said, unless you are able to maintain it for the next 6 to 18 months, don't even bother. It's got to be something that's sustainable, that we can train our people, that our efficiency level is to be acceptable in terms of versus the risk that we're exposing ourselves to. And I think that's maybe the first thing, and that's where the dress comes in. That's where comfort comes in. If you're not comfortable, you make mistakes, and these mistakes could be going well beyond anything that has to do with COVID-19 or anything like that. So I do think the facial region is what's important. Everything else is just a normal washing and disinfection procedure.
There's some dentists in Toronto that posted a very controversial deal saying that they think it's not an aerosol problem, it's a droplet problem. They say evidence shows COVID-19 is almost exclusively spread by droplets. These challenges underpinned by belief disease is airborne and that wearing N95 masks will reduce healthcare worker risk when the evidence and science says otherwise. I'm sure you've seen this, but back from our virology days, they always talked about the viral load. And some viruses like hepatitis B, you only needed one. But with AIDS, they thought it was 100,000. With cholera, they thought it was 100,000. Do you think there's a viral load to this coronavirus? And I mean, even an N95 mask is telling you it let 5% through. So if one virus can get through and get me, well, hell, an N95 mask doesn't even work. Are we looking at a singular virus transmitting a disease, or do we need a viral load? And is it more droplet or aerosol?
There definitely is a viral load that's important, and that viral load will be different depending on your immune system, right, and on certain circumstances. So I think there's evidence, right, that the viral load needs to be a lot higher for children, and probably a lot lower for immune-compromised people in the 80s or 90s, right? So we see a lot of differences there. In terms of this discussion, whether it's airborne or not, the first version of SARS-CoV-1, that was airborne, right? That spread airborne in Toronto, of all places, in hospitals. It spread airborne over 20 years ago in Hong Kong. I do not see the big difference between, the CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2 right now. I just don't see any big fundamental differences. I think the only problem that we're dealing with, it is very, very difficult to measure an airborne virus. It's just difficult. What we are not able to measure that even at this point, not in real time for sure, right? You got to go to a laboratory in order to basically see what's going on. So what we're using airborne particle counters, basically being able to go down to a similar size range of what we see for the micro droplets. We're able to measure down with laser optical devices down to 0.3 microns. And we are able, what we do, we basically look at what is happening before procedure, what's happening during a procedure, what's happening, the different procedures are different. You have microscaling, you have, your tooth preparation, and then you have the abrasion, right? Abrasion tools, and we're seeing different increases in airborne particle levels. We're not able to tell you whether there's a virus in there, but we're able to basically say, well, if we're increasing these, the chance of these aerosols carrying microorganisms obviously goes up in a proportionate scale. And then it's a really scientific way to be able to see what's going on. I think the argument is, especially in a dental practice, is probably fairly academic at this point, whether it's airborne or not, because number one, you are in a confined environment, you're very close to the patient, and you're doing, and clearly everybody's agreeing that an aerosol procedure is actually getting a virus airborne. I mean, this is where some of the laboratory experiments have been very clear that you can suspend a virus for hours in the air when you do an aerolization procedure. So I do think in the dental areas, in the dental field, probably not that much discussion going on. Other areas for sure. If I'm in a building, in a 10-story building, and I'm on the first floor, is someone on the third floor able to get it because it spreads to the air conditioning system? I think these are the areas that have not been yet explored fully. But within a dental office, I do believe that we can talk about this being definitely having an airborne aspect to it. Whether it's the most important one, I'm sure it is not. I'm sure, again, being able to protect yourself from direct transmission is still the most important thing that you can do. But that's why air purification with the extraoral devices, sucking away that aerosol before it can spread and before it can deposit on the surfaces of the dental practice, is basically a direct exposure reduction.
So, everyone knows when you walk into a dental office, it just has that smell. And, when I grew up in Kansas, about a third of my friends were from the farm, and they never smelled the poop on the farm. And when you're a young kid, the first night you're like, God, this dairy farm just smells like a big poop factory. But the people living there, they didn't even smell it. Even in the chicken farms, the ammonia would burn my eyes. But the old farmers, they didn't even smell the ammonia. So the dental office, yes. But if you go on vacation for a week or 2 weeks and you walk back into your dental office, it just hits you. What is that smell?
Well, I do think it might be different in different parts of the world. I'm not so familiar with exactly the substances that are being used in North America. Obviously, alcohol is a part of it, right? Isopropyl-based disinfectants are a big part of that. And then some of the other markers that are possibly in your disinfectant. Sometimes it's your equipment, right? If you have linoleum floor, especially if you're dealing in a new practice, that you would have the smell from your new equipment. That could be part of this, but typically we see disinfectant smells out there. And there's been something that people actually have written about, giving people anxieties, right? Because these are triggers. While there may not be a health impact from that, it gives you a psychological trigger when you come in there. And I think it's something to be aware of for the patients. That's why ventilation rates, I think, are very important. Make sure that we're getting enough fresh air in there so we're able to take out some of these smells. And when people are arriving, they don't feel, it's not triggering the last painful experience.
You have a big footprint around the world. You deal with China, Switzerland. By the way, to the Americans who might not have been over there, Switzerland, the part that touches Germany is pretty all German. And the part that touches French, they all speak French. So I always think of Switzerland as like, it's really two countries. Is that fair to say? I mean, there's a big French section, a big German section. Would you say that?
Well, if you arrive in Switzerland and you actually carry some Swiss money, you will notice we actually have 4 national languages, right? So we speak there's 4 national languages. So your money has everything in 4 languages on there. We got the French, we got the Italian, and we got the German, and then we have a an old part of Latin that's still spoken in parts of Switzerland, where when the Roman Empire retreated and they left a few soldiers and their families up in the mountains, that survived until today. Now, so very, very, very rich history for a country that only has 7 odd million inhabitants. But yes, we're right in the middle of Europe, and we really basically touch upon all those other cultures.
Yeah, I love the rule of 50 million. They say, you know, the joke in America is, what do you call someone who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call someone who speaks 1 language? American. And that's really not true, because if you're born and you have 50 million people you can talk to, you have no need to learn another language. So if you're in China and you know Mandarin Chinese, why would you need to learn Italian or German? But by the time you get down to a country with 5 million, the average person knows 5 different languages. So, you know, if you're in Denmark, you need to speak to Germans, Italians, and Spanish, and very interesting. But I don't want to get political, but the reason I don't want to get political is a lot of people in the media are arguing about different governments' response. But a lot of epidemiologists and a lot of statistics people, like 538, are saying that individuals are not reacting to what their government recommends. They're self-isolating. So even though Arizona said, "Oh, we're back open," half the people said, "Well, I'm not back open." And then so in some of these states where they're opening up, the people aren't opening back up. And in other states where they have really locked down, well, they still have tons of people that are going to the beach and all this stuff. So there's a lot of individual stuff, but you have, you know what's going on in China, and everybody over here is talking about Sweden doing it differently than Norway. I just want you to try to, from base what you're seeing, I've really been impressed with what Dr. Kwon Park's doing in South Korea, but a lot of those guys, they dealt with SARS-1 in 2012. So this is their second rodeo. In North America, it's our first rodeo with this. SARS, the coronavirus hit the United States in 2012 and killed 38 million souls, but nobody cared because it was all pigs. And if it had been, 38 million people, it wouldn't have been our first rodeo. But when it killed 38 million pigs, no one even talked about it. But from looking around the world, do you think some dental communities are leading the way and other dental communities should be paying attention and taking notes? Any countries you think get A's and other countries maybe B's, C's, D's, or F's? What have you learned? I mean, there's 2 million dentists in 208 countries. Surely someone is doing at the front of the line and someone is at the back of the line. How do you see it?
I think we see leaders in many countries. I'm seeing Italy right now really taking good lead. I mean, they've been hit so hard, right? I think they've had a long time to think about it, right? Since it hit them, and they were able to now cautiously reopen. I think the U.S. is really, we're seeing a lot of proactive action here in the U.S. We see other parts of the world where people haven't thought about it that much, including Switzerland. I think it does depend a little bit on your, well, maybe for dentists, number one, you believe in technology, right? How are you able to use technology to, to bring about a result? It has something to do with, I'm always saying in the US, whenever it's about air, we're noticing that people are more knowledgeable. But we're in the country that invented air conditioning, right? So you got to think, if you don't like what's in the air, well, if you don't like your temperature, you do something about it. Many other parts of the world, you just don't even think about that you would be able to cool the air or something like that. And so I do think it goes similar. As regards to procedures, I think pretty much around the world, they're being synced right now. You know, you have your oral solutions, right, that your patients are seeing. I saw that when I was visiting dentists in Switzerland, that this becomes part of the procedure. You have many times as the spacing of patients coming in, the disinfectant procedures in terms of surfaces, all of that I think is getting very, very similar in many parts of the world. Responding to the personal protection, I do see differences. Yeah.
Are you more of a B2C consumer company because they want clean air because they have allergies or what have you, or have you more been a B2B business, commercial, healthcare? What is your? I know you started with making an air filter for Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, we're kind of a strange company when it comes to that. We really do. I mean, we don't sell different equipment to different people, right? If you're an allergy sufferer, you basically get hospital-grade equipment from us, and the same units that we in North America selling to allergy sufferers typically are selling to hospitals because they just have the same grade of performance. So we don't make a watered-down version for consumers. So we do the prosumer market basically. You know, our equipment starts at about $700 here in the U.S. So it is really it's on the higher end of the consumer market, and then we make equipment that goes into hospitals, that goes into schools, that goes into the more into the larger spaces. So for us here in the United States, it's typically 50-50. We're really doing a lot of we're doing a lot of both, the traditional, more the higher end of the consumer market, as well as a range of professional markets. And then around the globe, it can vary, but typically it's about 50-50 in terms of commercial as well as residential use.
The new thing now everyone's talking about is the hypochlorous acid, HOCl. I guess there were some videos flying around. That's what they were using in cruise ships, and the cruise ships are claiming they're going to open back up for business in August. What do you think of hypochlorous acid? Do you think that's something that we should add to our dental protocol?
I'm not knowledgeable enough at this point. I can tell you typically, I mean, we get a lot of questions about other technologies, right? UV lights and such. I can only tell people always the challenge when looking at a technology is not does the technology work or does it not work? Typically, most technologies can work. The question is, are they properly implemented? And is it working? Just because someone says I have a UV light somewhere does not mean you get the kill rate that you're looking for, right? So the challenge is, I think right now, I would look for a lot of evidence from manufacturers regarding backup, because you have so many people getting into these businesses at the moment who may, 6 months ago have been in a completely different business. A lot of the supply chain right now, because people want it now and they don't know whether there's going to be a big demand in 12 months from now. So a lot of the people are basically distributors setting up. We see a lot of supply chain coming in from China. The due diligence and asking, what evidence do you have that this actually does work, I think is really what dentists need to do at this point for anything that you're seeing. If you're seeing, we're seeing some very reputable supply houses for dentists right now take on some products where I would say, whoa, I hope you have done your due diligence to look into these products, have evaluated the evidence that you're putting up online, and a lot of what I'm seeing is not holding up at this point. I think right now everybody's struggling to get products out there, make sure that you're fulfilling this need as dentists are wanting to go back to work safely. But I do think that a lot of the technologies out there probably are not validated to the degree at which they're advertised.
I still got, are you good on time? I still got a few more questions with you.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time. The couple of the other questions is, let's say that aerosol. Do you think, I loved what you're saying. Come on, let's get if you're not going to do this for 6 months, let's not do it. In fact, we were wrestling that, I was telling my, I have two companies. I have a B2C consumer company. I have a dental office, and then I have a B2B. I have a media company. I have a magazine and a website. Well, at the magazine, the website, you don't need to come to work because we don't have customers, and I'm keeping them at home. And they were wanting to come back. And I said, well, no, because we're going to have we think it's going to come back harder in the fall. That's what these viruses do. So let's have a longer horizon. I said, you see Facebook, Google, Alphabet say, just stay home for the rest of the year. My receptionist, Dawn, was saying, well, I don't want to put a plexiglass up on the counter if we just have to take it away in 6 weeks. And what you're saying is great. Well, let's not put up a plexiglass counter unless that's our new protocol. And so I love your long time horizon. What do you think is going to make it that we're still doing after the pandemic is over? Let's go out to 2022. These pandemics, it looks like they got good data on about 7 of them, and they're all about 18 to 24 months. So let's go past 2022. Now we're now January 1st, 2023. Do you think we're going to have in 2023 negative air pressure rooms? Will that be a new protocol or not really?
I think some people will take it on. I mean, if you're a new construction, right, and you're building a super new office, I think we will see certainly that some of these procedures will carry over. Maybe there will be code changes, right? Who knows in terms of, who can share an air conditioning system, right? Do app operatories need to have their dedicated systems, as I guess many will already have? I think we'll see changes there. I do think that we'll generally see changes more on the personal level, right? Will dentists go back to wearing surgical masks or rather go permanently for N95 masks? I probably think they'll stick with the N95 mask. And the comfort level is similar. So I think it's sustainable. In terms of the disinfection routines, I do think that they will stay more intensive. I think we will see that in terms of the longer term effects. Will we shake hands with our patients in future? Right? I mean, I've seen everything over many years. I've been in a dental office where the dentist was smoking 25 years ago, right? So things are changing, and I do think that we'll probably see that we'll have a lot more careful behavior going on, and a lot more of the procedures that we're seeing right now that people will carry over, and it'll have a lot of benefit in terms of our normal flu season and our infection rates. Infection rates are too high in hospitals, but what are hospitals doing about that? We've had studies with air purification that were showing that you can bring down infection rates in hospitals related to Aspergillus by 50%, saving hundreds of thousands for typical hospitals. Have they implemented that? No, they have not. So I think it depends always on the simple things that you can do. Yes, they will be implemented. The things that will show immediate results, don't cost a lot of money. Yes, they will be there to stay. Everything else, I think, will depend on the personal commitment, and ultimately whether there's going to be a code for it or whether there's going to be something else that's going to basically make sure that people's minds are shifted in terms of how they want to do business. But that's why I say, make sure it's something that really is able to be integrated into everyday lives. And if that can be the case, I think it will be there to stay.
Frank, if I tell you this story, you're gonna find out why I'm bald and don't have any hair. You can't make this up. In Phoenix, Arizona, if you go over to by my office in Phoenix, you go to the hospital, and you can pull up with the doctor in his Porsche, get out of the car, walk into the building, take the elevator, go up, and all you got to do is put on gloves, mask, gown, wash your hands forever, and suit up at a system or observe them. And you're wearing the same shoes you got out of the car in the parking lot, and somebody is filleted open and you're looking down at your Asics shoes or your Adidas or Pumas or whatever, and it's crazy. Then you walk across the street to Intel, where they're making chips for a phone. Their workers have to take off all their clothes, go in, put in a whole new uniform. The air is filtered to like 1 part per billion. And I mean, it's just so obvious that America cares about a chip 1,000,000 times more than your grandmother getting an open heart surgery. The guy doing an open heart surgery is wearing the same tennis shoes he ran 5 miles in this morning, and oh, maybe he put a little sake over it or something. And at Intel, I mean, at Intel, they're like, well, we can't have one of your skin cells fall onto a chip. So why are chip makers and Intel and why are they, I mean, how much cleaner would you say Intel's chip factory is than the best hospital in California?
Probably 100 to 1,000 times cleaner, right? In terms of what you can measure.
Yeah, and then the data, you ask the CDC, well, how many people are actually killed in a hospital each year for a reason that was not why they went to the doctor? And they say, well, you know, it probably varies between 100 to 200,000 a year. It's like, well, why isn't that an exact number? I mean, why wouldn't you say it's 112,211? I mean, this is just, I mean, America has been caught with swimming without any swimming clothes on. I mean, we're out there swimming naked. Our Intel is 1,000 times more cleaner than a hospital. And it's just bizarre. I want to ask some questions to you. I'm getting text messages because they know I'm podcasting you. A lot of them are asking about noise. Some systems are louder than other. What are your thoughts on the noise of an air filtration system? Is that a limit or?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's incredibly important. The challenge you have, well, noise comes from, I always tell people, it depends on your fan type within your air purification system. There's 3 different fan types. Many of the extraoral units that you're out there are basically use the same technology you use in a vacuum cleaner, right? And you know a vacuum cleaner is noisy. The reason is you're getting an insane amount of RPM there, probably over 20,000 RPM, right? So a very quick spinning fan, and that makes it very noisy. And the other, while you're getting good suction, but you're not moving that much air. What we've chosen to do to get around that problem, because again, our products are being used in very noise sensitive environments, is we use a backward curved radial fan. We go at about 10 times less RPM than a vacuum cleaner or any of these typical suction devices. So we tend to get about half the noise from that. I've recently been in a procedure for a dentist who did not request our system. It's just personal friend, and he was most worried about the noise. And then when we used the procedure, we have 6 fan speeds on our unit. The highest fan speed goes all the way up to 300 CFM, and it depends on the pitch. But he said he would have absolutely zero problem working on it on the highest fan speed, which comes in at about 67 decibels. But we saw that all the other equipment within the dental procedure, as you were drilling and so on, it was definitely, the patient said it was no problem, the doctor said it was problem, and the assistant said it was not a problem on that. So you really can go full speed on some of these systems, and they're absolutely quiet enough. I think it depends a lot on the pitch of the product. So I think that's something, and we'll see whether we can actually put up a video online sometime soon that's able to show that during and give people a comparison between a unit running and then all the other equipment within the dental office. But I do think it's hugely important, especially if you're working all day in a confined space, because you don't want to go home with a headache or be having to shout at someone just to be heard.
So some dentists are asking, can I just buy one for the office, or do I need one for each operatory? And some people are saying, that they have, that the size of an operatory could vary anywhere from, 10 by 10 to 25 by 25.
Right. So the size, well, if for the aerosol removal, the size of the operatory doesn't matter. It really, what matters is what type of procedures you're doing there, right? And if you're doing a cavity preparation, studies have shown that during cavity preparation and ultrasonic scaling, as well as air abrasion, those are the three procedures which are giving you the most aerosol generation within the room. And those are the ones I would basically say are the ones worthwhile getting the extraoral units for. And then as regards to space, we've had people with very small operatories that prefer to have a wall-mounted unit because they can mount it up higher in the room, and then the suction arm is basically coming down, and you don't even need to take any floor space away. So it depends a little bit on your side, but we typically haven't seen the size challenge has not been as big as what people imagine in these operatories. And then typically people are concerned about the waiting area for patients. If you have a number of patients there, make sure the cross-contamination fear is not too big.
So you're saying size matters?
It matters for a room air purifier. So we typically, I did a little calculation for you just to see if many of our units deliver you 300 CFM. Typically, if you're in a room size operatory where you have a 15 by 15 foot operatory with a 9-foot ceiling, which I think could be, it's a decent size, you would actually on a full speed get 9 air changes per hour. So 9 air changes per hour is actually right between hospital norms for an operating area. That is for an older style hospital, that would be 6 air changes. For a brand new hospital, that would require 12 air changes. So there are your 9 air changes right in between. So 9 times an hour, you would be actually completely cleaning the air within that space. That is a very, very high reduction level. You basically will be able to bring about very, very good air cleaning results. I mean, we've been able to actually see that as soon as you're putting a unit on, the particle numbers in that operatory are dropping.
Interesting. And ceilings, when it's funny, when we were talking about Switzerland and Italy, we never said the EU, and I don't like the term the United States of America because it's too big of a country. It's a continent. I mean, you're over there in LA. You can't compare LA to Anchorage. You can't compare where I was born in Wichita to New York City. It's such a huge country, and ceilings are different around the country. You go into some areas like Dallas in a retail center. I mean, you might have a 20-foot ceiling up there where they actually show the air ducts. And then in old school, they have those drop ceilings that are like 8 feet. But so the ceiling height really matters in all this, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it just increases your air volume that you want to be able. There's more area to spread for what's in there, so it'll take longer to get it out. That's why it's so important, ideally, to go to the source. Eliminate your aerosols right at the source. And that's going to be able to basically, you're going to be so much more efficient because at that moment in time, the concentration of aerosols or viruses or bacteria is going to be at its highest. So whatever you can eliminate at that moment in time, and we're typically, our suction devices are typically positioned about 4 to 6 inches away, right, from your patient area. So you're able to really capture typically, 70, 80, 90% of those aerosols before they can spread in the room. And that is ideal because that's basically, that way you don't have to filter the entire air in the room all the time. You can really get rid of it right there. And then the rest of the filtration is going to be so much more effective.
My gosh, I could talk to you for 40 days and 40 nights. Was there anything you were hoping I would talk about that I didn't bring up, or you're like your call center. When people are calling you, what are the FAQs? Is there anything I missed or anything?
No, at this point, really, I mean, the only thing I have to, maybe the only thing to share, we're really trying our best to keep up with people's inquiries and their demands and their expectations. I think it's we're doing the best of if anybody wants to get in contact with us, email really is the best. It may take a day or two for us to get back to them. We are absolutely giving priority to medical professionals at this moment in time as we're trying to allocate our resources.
What email?
We have a form online that people can go IQAir.com, and we actually have a dental section there. They can fill out a form on that. So that's an area you can download. You can download our peer-reviewed study from the British Dental Journal from 2010, talking about bioaerosol reductions, actually quantifying those reductions with the system that people are purchasing from us. So it's quite important, I think, for us to give that information. We have some information up there on mercury too and other aerosols. So that's a good starting point. And then just fill out the form and give us a day or two to get back to you. And we're doing our absolute best to be able to to make sure that people are able to return back to work safely. The other thing that's important, many dentists right now come with the air purifiers. They're waiting for the accessories for the extra oral suction. Those ones can be added anytime over the course, over years. So start with an air purifier, add the extra oral suction to it, and over time, I think make sure that it's just something that's sustainable within the practice. And I think also important, give peace of mind. We now have been starting to basically make sure that they're integrating this on the website, letting people know about that they are really caring and thinking about this. And I think that's an ability to show leadership to your patients. So I think that's at this moment in time the best thing that people can do, because I do think a lot of people are putting off procedures right now, and I do think that you will see that dental practices actually will have to deal a lot more in a month or two with patients than they are right now. I think a lot of people right now are staying still away, trying to see that it's safe when they're going to their dentist. And I think giving that positive message that we are thinking about everything, putting that on the website, maybe even some pictures about some of the procedures and things will help to make people comfortable.
And when you talk about that dental study from the British Dental Journal, is that IQAir.com/US, or how do I find that study?
Yes, please go on the US section right now. We just put on some new content up, and we have over 17 country websites. So if you're ending up on a European website, the data may not be there. Make sure you're on the US website, and then as you're there.
Where is that study on the US website? I'm at IQAir. By the way, what does IQ stand for? Just intelligence quotient?
It does, yes. Well, you see, we've always been very flexible in air filtration to respond to the customer's needs, and that's basically what this is. And intelligence is all about being able to adapt to a new challenge. And so that's something that early on we thought was really important in air purification, be able to adapt to your customers' challenges, and that's where that comes from. So if you go on the website, you will have different sections. If you go to solutions, you will actually see that there's a solution section for dental offices. Right. And then when you go there, you will actually see that there is, and as you're scrolling down on the right, lower right-hand side, you will get to a section that basically says independent study. There's actually two sections of independent studies. The one that is from the British Dental Journal is the pilot study of bioaerosol reduction using an air cleaning system during dental procedures. So that's I think the most relevant study to today's problem. It's also the only peer-reviewed medical study really that I've seen done with any air purification system.
So I'm on IQAir.com/US commercial application offices, which is on that
No,
solution.
you would go, sorry, you're under normal offices. You need to go to the dental section. We have a special dental section under solutions. It's called dental offices.
I see. Oh, okay. I clicked the offices. Okay, there. Okay, so now I am at IQAir.com/US/commercial applications dental. Okay. And then
And then if you scroll down on the right,
and so you have 2 independent studies, right?
yeah, we have 2 studies. The lower one is a pilot study. That's what they did in 3 dental offices in the United Kingdom. That's the most relevant one for bioaerosol reduction.
All righty. Well, it was worth the whole podcast just to find those 2 studies, and I will read those 2 studies now, and I will post them on social media. I want to thank you that during a pandemic, during all this pandemonium, you had time to come on and talk to a bunch of dentists on Dental Town, and I really appreciate that. By the way, is that a red scorpion on your jacket?
That's a spider. I guess that's a.
Oh, is that a spider?
That's a spider. Yes.
Okay. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show and answering the questions. And it's been very informative. And if you have any extra time, you might want to check some of those. Actually, every company should do it. They should go to Dental Town and do a search for their company. Because if you go in there and do a search under IQAir, I mean, you have pages of threads talking about it. So this is the new next thing, and your guidance is right. We probably shouldn't do anything unless it's sustainable. And Raya, did you have any questions? Come here, Raya. Come here, Raya. My little granddaughter is here. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It was just very, very fascinating and informative to podcast interview, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Howard. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Very engaging. And I think you're putting a lot of good information out there.
All right. Have a good day. Are you?